Aleph, Bet, Vet, Gimel, Dalet, Hey, Vav, Zayin, Chet, Tet, Yud, Kaf, Chaf, Lamed, Mem, Nun, Samech, Ayin, Pei, Fe, Tzadik, Kuf, Resh, Shin, Sin, Taf. Now I think I've said enough.
Welcome to another in our series from the Aleph-Bet, a program for anyone of any age who wishes to learn how to read and understand Hebrew, especially the Hebrew that's used in the experience of Judaism. I'm Mark Golub. It's wonderful to be with you again. Thank you for all of your wonderful emails, your encouragement, your kind words. We'll continue to do the very best we can to present you with an outstanding series of programs that will help you understand how to read and understand Hebrew. And I remind you that Hebrew is a language, not simply a grouping of sounds. And it's important for all of us to teach you as much as we can about what Hebrew means and how it becomes a real language in the experience of Judaism. I also want you to encourage you to continue to write me with any questions you may have about aspects of Hebrew. And in a little while, I'm going to answer a very interesting question that was asked about the vowel sound kamatz. And we'll get to that in one moment. But first, I want to take a look at the Hebrew letters you've learned. You've learned all the Hebrew letters. You've learned all the vowel sounds in Hebrew. And I want this time to simply put some letters up on the screen that look very much alike and see now if you can almost instantly tell the difference between the letters and the sounds they make. So Alex, let's begin with our first two pair of letters. Here you see them. Can you tell me what the letter on the right is and what the letter on the left is? If you said the letter on the right is the letter Bet, B in English, you are correct. And the letter to its left is the letter Kaf, Mitsuyan. Please notice that the Bet and the Kaf look very much alike, but the Bet has the bed, and the Kaf is sort of a backwards C. Bet and Kaf. Let's take a look at some others. How about these two letters? If you said the Vet and the Chaf, you are correct, Mitsuyan. And please remember that the Bet and the Vet are really the same letter. They're both the letter Bet. With a dagesh, the Bet is pronounced as a B. Without the dagesh, this dot in the middle, it is pronounced as a letter V, and therefore we tend to call it the Vet. And the Kaf and the Chaf are the same letter. With a dagesh, it's a K sound, the Kaf. Without the dagesh, it's a Chaf, but it's the same letter. And the Bet and the Vet and the Kaf and the Chaf are two of the three Hebrew letters which do change their sound, depending on whether they do or do not have a dagesh inside. So here again we see the Vet and the Chaf, and we'll add one more letter. This is the final Chaf, Mitsuyan. And let's see the Kaf Chaf family. Here you see the Kaf, the Chaf, and the final Chaf, Mitsuyan. Here now is the other letter that does change its sound with the dagesh. Here is the Pei and the Fei, Mitsuyan, with a point. A dagesh can sometimes be looked at as a point. With a point, it makes the P sound and is called the Pei. Same letter, take the dagesh out. The same letter is now pronounced as an English F. We call it Fei. It's really a Pei that makes an F sound. And so you have the Pei, the Fei, and to complete the family, the final Fei, Mitsuyan. Okay, Alex, let's put up the next three letters. And sometimes these letters are confused. The first letter and the second letter, what are they? If you said the first letter is the ayin, you are correct. And the second letter is the tsari, Mitsuyan. And what sound does the ayin make? You are correct if you said silent. It makes no sound at all. Sometimes you'll hear people say an ayin makes an I sound. They're incorrect. And the ayin looks a little bit like an English letter Y. Sometimes I'll hear people pronounce the ayin as if it's a Y sound. The ayin is one of the two Hebrew letters that is silent. And the other silent letter, of course, is the Aleph, of course. The Aleph, the first letter of the alphabet. The Aleph and the ayin are silent, but the ayin looks very much like, to some people, the tzadi. And the tzadi makes the TZ sound in English, as in the name Mr. and Mrs. Katz, or it's raining cats and dogs, although that's not a TZ, that's a TS in English. But Katz, the tzadi makes the ts sound. Don't confuse the silent ayin with the tzadi. And of course, the tzadi has a final form. This is the final tzadi right here, mitsuyan. And remember, anytime you see a letter that goes below the line, if it's a final letter and you can't remember exactly what the letter is when it's not final, just take the part that extends below the line, push it back up into a horizontal position, and lo and behold, you have the tzadi. With the fei, same thing. Push the fei back up, you get the fei, mitsuyan. The chaf, a little bit different, but sort of. There you see the chaf being pushed back up, and it is the chaf again. Pull it back down, it's the final chaf. Grab a hold of the fei and pull it down, it's the final fei. And take a hold of that tzadi and pull it down, you get the final tzadi. So here you have the ayin, silent, the tzadi, the TZ sound, tz, and the final tzadi, mitsuyan. Okay, how about these two letters? Sometimes these two letters are confused, but notice the first letter is open at the top. This is the only Hebrew letter that's open at the top. It is the Hebrew letter tet, mitsuyan. It is the T sound, mitsuyan. And the letter next to it is open at the bottom. It's like a little mouse hole. And it has a man climbing the mountain. This, of course, is the letter mem, mitsuyan. So notice the tet is open at the top. The mem has a little mouse hole. Don't confuse the tet with the mem. And now we're going to take a mem and put a final mem next to it. This is the way you write the mem if it comes at the end of a word. And next to the final mem, we're going to put this letter. What letter is this that looks very much like a final mem but is not? This is the samech, mitsuyan. And the samech has a slice in the right-hand bottom corner, a slice for the samech. Don't confuse the samech and the final mem, mitsuyan. All right, here's an easy letter, one of my favorite letters because it is the galloping gimel, mitsuyan. It's the only letter with legs. But now we're going to put another letter next to the galloping gimel. This is the nun, mitsuyan. The English letter N in Hebrew is the nun. But the nun and the gimel look a little bit alike. But notice the gimel has the legs, the nun does not. And now we're going to take a letter nun and put a letter next to it. What's the letter next to the nun? A final nun, mitsuyan. And if we push the part that goes below the line back to its horizontal position, you can see the nun, but the final nun goes below the line. And now we're going to take the final nun and put two letters next to it. What is this letter right next to the final nun? It looks just like a final nun, except it does not go below the line. This is the letter vav, mitsuyan. Don't be confused between the final nun and the vav. The vav does not go below the line. The final nun does. And to the left of the vav, we have the zayin, mitsuyan. That's the English letter Z in Hebrew. So you have the final nun, the vav, and the zayin, mitsuyan. Here are two more letters. Don't confuse them. Notice the one on the right is round in the upper right-hand corner. This is the letter Resh, Mitsuyan. And the letter next to it is the letter Dalid, Mitsuyan. Don't confuse the Resh and the Dalid. We're going to start with the Dalid this time and put a letter next to it. There's a Dalid, and what is this letter? You've seen it already before on this lesson. Is it a final Dalid? No, there is no such thing as a final Dalid. And remember, a letter goes below the line. To know what it is before it's final, you have to push the part that goes below the line back to its horizontal position. There, that doesn't look anything like a Dalid. Extend it back down. This, of course, again, is the final Chaf. Don't ever think a final Chaf is a final Dalid. There is no final Dalid. Okay, how about this letter? This letter is the only Hebrew letter with a cap on it. It is the Hebrew Kuf. It makes the K sound. What other Hebrew letter makes the K sound? Right, the Kaf. So please remember the two K sounds, the Kuf and the Kaf. And the Kuf is the only Hebrew letter that does go below the line, which is not a final letter, the letter Kuf. How about this letter, which changes depending on where you put the dot? If you put the dot on the right-hand side or the right-hand sail, you get the letter Shin, making the SH sound in English, like a ship, as you see in this little animation. But if you take the dot and put it on the left side or the left sail, it becomes the Sin and makes an S sound, just like the letter Samech. The Sin and the Samech make the exact same sound. And if you were to ask, why are there Hebrew letters which make the same sound? Why are there two letters, for example, that make the T sound? The Tet and the Tuf. The letter with the big toe, Mitsuyan. Why is there the Sin and the Samech? Why is there the Kaf and the Kuf? And the answer is, in ancient Hebrew, they all made slightly different sounds, but over time, language tends to get easier and easier, and now all of these letters make the same sounds as each other. And it's the same thing that we have in English. There is the S and the soft C. They both make the S sound. You also have the K and the hard C. They both make the K sound. And so in Hebrew, you have certain letters which make the same sound as other letters. No big deal. How about these three letters? The first has a Hoel. It's the letter Hey. The second one is the Chet. It makes the same sound as the Chaf, Mitsuyan. And the third letter we just saw, the letter with the big toe, is the Tuf. Notice all of these letters are similar in look, but each of them is distinct. The Hey, the Chet, and the Tuf. And finally, there are two letters which really don't look like any other letters at all. One is the smallest letter in the Hebrew alphabet. This is the Yud. It acts as the English letter Y does. The Yud can be a consonant with a vowel of its own, as in this syllable, Yo, Mitsuyan. Or it can be added to a vowel, and then it becomes part of the vowel sound, as this vowel, A, Mitsuyan. You take a Tseire, the two dots side by side, you add a Yud to it, it stays A. That's the letter Yud. And the last letter to show you is the letter Lamed, Mitsuyan. The Lamed, of course, makes the sound of the English letter L. So there you have all the Hebrew letters in the alphabet and how they sometimes look like other letters. We hope there'll be no confusion when you look at any Hebrew letter. And here they are in alphabetical order. Aleph, Bet, Vet, really the same letter. Gimel, Dalid, Hey, Vav, Zayin, Chet, Tet, Yud, Kaf and Chaf with a final Chaf, Lamed, Mem and final Mem, Nun and final Nun, Samech, Ayin, Pei and Fei, the same letter, and the final Fei makes the family of Pei, Fei, final Fei, Tzadi with a final Tzadi, Kuf, Resh, Shin, Sin, same letter depending on where the dot comes, and Taf. And as the song goes, now I think I've said enough. There is your Hebrew alphabet. Congratulations, you know all of the letters in the Hebrew alphabet. We've also taught you the vowel sounds. We'll go through them real quickly for you, and then I want to answer a question about the kamats. But here you have 3 vowel sounds that make the ah sound. The patach is an ah, the kamats is an ah, and the chataf patach, which is really a pronounced shva with a vowel ah next to it to give it some body. Remember, any time you see the shva, it is not counted as a vowel, but it does make the ah sound. So vowel patach, vowel kamats, and the chataf patach, which is really a shva. Here you have the o, the cholam malay, o again, without the vav under it, cholam chaser, u, a vav with a dot inside, the shuruk, and another way to write u, 3 dots from left to right going down, the kubutz, u. And then you have the dotted vowels. 1 dot is the hirik, e. 2 dots is the tsere, a. And 3 dots is the segol, e. And sometimes the tsere, the 2 dots, a, are pronounced eh, as if it is a segol. You can add a yud to all of these vowels. If you add a yud to the hirik, it stays e. If you add a yud to the tsere, it is always a. And if you add a yud to a segol, it is always eh. If you add a yud to an o, to a cholam, it is oi. If you add a yud to a shuruk, it becomes ui. If you add a yud to a patach, it is always I, as in hi there. And if you add a yud to a kamatz, it is I at the end of a word, but inside a word it does not change the sound, and it is still pronounced ah as a simple kamatz. So here now is a wrinkle to the kamats. I've taught you from the very beginning of our time together that both the patach and the kamats make the same sound ah in the dialect called Sephardic Hebrew, which is the Hebrew spoken in Israel. It's the dialect which really most of the modern Jewish world is going towards. It does not mean that the dialect called Ashkenazic Hebrew is in any way wrong or bad or second-rate. In Ashkenazic Hebrew, the patach is pronounced ah, and the kamatz is pronounced aw, as in the word saw. And when I was young, I was taught the Ashkenazic form of Hebrew. And in Ashkenazic, the patach is an ah, and the kamatz is an aw. In fact, it was called a komatz. And then, as I continued to learn Hebrew, I was taught the Sephardic dialect, because again, that's the dialect used in the state of Israel. And in the Sephardic dialect, it's a hair simpler in terms of the pronunciation of language. So the patach and the kamatz are now both pronounced ah. And I've taught you that when the kamatz is added to a pronounced shva, a chataf kamatz, it retains the old Sephardic pronunciation of or. And so far, that's the only time I've taught you the kamatz is pronounced or, as in Ashkenazic Hebrew. There is one other time the kamatz retains the or pronunciation even in Sephardic Hebrew. And I was asked the question because on our last lesson I used it instinctively. I pronounced a kamatz as if it were an or, and I was asked why. I thought the kamatz is always pronounced ah. And here is the explanation. I'm going to use some Hebrew words to show it to you. Let me show you this Hebrew word. Notice this word has two vowels. If it has two vowels, it must have two syllables. Very good. There's always a one-to-one relationship between the number of vowels in a Hebrew word and the number of syllables in a Hebrew word. Count the number of vowels and you know how many syllables are in the word. So there are two vowels in this word and each of them is a kamatz. Very good. There's a kamatz under the first letter, the kuf, and there's a kamatz under the last letter, the final chaf, mitsuyan. And you do know the root of this word. Remember, Hebrew is made up of three-letter roots. What's the root of this word? Kuf, dalid, shin, mitsuyan. Do you remember what that root means? Kuf, dalid, shin always has something to do with holiness, mitsuyan, as in the word kadosh. Mitsuyan, kadosh. So here we're dealing with a word based on the root kuf dalid shin. There's a kamatz under the kuf and a kamatz in the last letter, the final chaf. If there are two syllables, where would we divide the word into two parts? After which letter would you draw a line to divide this word into two parts? And you may remember you always divide a word between two consecutive shvas. Wherever you see two shvas in a row, always divide the word between the two shvas, and therefore the first syllable would be the kuf, the kamatz, and the dalid, and the second syllable would be the shin, followed by the chaf, with the kamatz inside the chaf. So how would you pronounce the first syllable of this word? Based on all we've learned so far, you should say kad, mitsuyan, kad. And the second syllable, obviously it begins with a pronounced shva, therefore it is shecha, mitsuyan, shecha, one syllable with a grace note for the pronounced shva, shecha, not shecha, but shecha. So the first syllable is kad, the second syllable is shecha. The word seems to be pronounced kad shecha. And now here's the wrinkle. Incidentally, this is a very minor point in Hebrew. But still, since I was asked, I want to answer the question. The kamatz retains the Ashkenazic or sound anytime it comes in a syllable that ends with a silent shva. It's called a closed syllable, technically. Anytime it is followed by a silent shva, and the syllable is unaccented, meaning the accent of the word is on another syllable. If a kamatz comes in a syllable that is closed, meaning that it's followed by a silent shva, and that syllable is unaccented, then the kamatz retains the Ashkenazic or sound. And therefore this would not be kad shecha, but kod shecha. Kod shecha. The kamatz is in a closed syllable. It is followed by a silent shva, and the syllable is unaccented. The accent of this word comes at the end of the word kod shecha. And you may ask me, how critical is this little wrinkle of Hebrew? The answer is not critical at all. Many, many, many people who read Hebrew or even know Hebrew don't know this rule and would pronounce this word kad shecha. But I'm trying to teach you everything you could possibly know about how to read, pronounce Hebrew. Understand, if the kamatz, normally pronounced ah, just like a patach, if a kamatz comes in a closed syllable, meaning it is followed by a silent shva, and that syllable is unaccented, in that case, it remains or, as in the Ashkenazic dialect, and this word would be pronounced kod shecha. Kod shecha. And here's another example. This word looks like it should be read kal. It means all in Hebrew. But the word kal really means all of, and this word is always connected to the following Hebrew word, as in, for example, all of your soul, or simply all your soul. And the word for soul in Hebrew is nefesh. We've shown you this before. If you add a final chaf at the end of a word, it's like adding the English pronoun your to the noun. So nafshecha becomes your soul. And if we put the word for all in front of nafshecha, making the English phrase all your soul, the kamatz under the kaf is not pronounced as a patach ah, but retains the or sound because kol is really a closed syllable. The lamed has a silent shva, and it is as if it is the first syllable of a two-word phrase. Kol nafshecha, not kal nafshecha, kol nafshecha. And kol nafshecha would be all your soul. If you add the b in front of it, the bet with the pronounced shva, it becomes with all your soul, and the dot comes out of the kaf, and the phrase becomes bechol nafshecha, a very well-known phrase because it's part of the V'ahavta prayer, the prayer that says, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, bechol levavcha, with all your soul, bechol nafshecha, and with all your might, bechol me'odecha. This is the wrinkle to the kamatz. If it comes in a closed syllable, unaccented, it retains the or sound. And the truth is this will happen very infrequently, and as we study Hebrew together, I'll try to point out to you the times that the kamatz is in a closed, unaccented syllable and retains the or sound. But at least you'll understand why every now and then you'll see a kamatz and you'll hear the or sound, not the patach ah sound. And while we have one more moment left, very quickly, here are the rules for the pronounced shva. Every shva is silent unless it comes under the first letter of a word, is the second of two in a row, or if it comes under a letter with a dot in it, with a dagesh in it. Under a dagesh, the shva is pronounced. The shva is pronounced I, as in the word fish. It is a grace note I, and the shva is never counted as a vowel, even when it is pronounced. And there's no more important rule in understanding how to break Hebrew words into syllables and then to pronounce them than knowing that the shva is sometimes silent and sometimes pronounced. When a shva begins or opens a syllable, it is pronounced I, as in the word fish. When a shva closes a syllable, ends a syllable, it is always silent and simply tells you to add the letter above the silent shva to the letter and vowel in front of it, extending a syllable by one Hebrew letter. That basically, again, is a review of all the letters, all the vowels, and the rules of the Shva. When we're together next time, we're just going to work on Hebrew words, both words for you to understand, and I'll show you a couple of Hebrew words and see if you can look at them. They will have both pronounced shvas or silent shvas. You'll have to figure out where to divide the word into syllables and how to pronounce the word. It'll be fun, because the most important thing for you to do is A, learn how to pronounce any word you see, and most importantly, to be able to translate, to know what these words mean in Hebrew. And at that point, this becomes a real language for you. I've said it before, I say it again, Mitsuyan and Mazal Tov to any of you who've stuck with us all this time and who now can know all the Hebrew letters, all the vowel sounds, and have a sense of how Hebrew words are put together. I hope you enjoyed that lesson of From the Aleph-Bet. And remember, you can download lesson sheets and worksheets for every lesson of this series free of charge. Just visit the JBS website homepage at jbstv.org and click on the program icon for From the Aleph-Bet. And then click on the very first option, From the Aleph-Bet Hebrew Study Sheets. And for anyone who can send JBS a tax-deductible donation of $180 or more, we'll be pleased to send you the entire 20-program Series 1 of From the Aleph-Bet on DVD, complete with a CD of lesson sheets and worksheets. JBS, expanding Jewish understanding, celebrating all things Jewish. Be well, my friends.
Aleph, Bet, Vet, Gimel, Dalet, Hey, Vav, Zayin, Chet, Tet, Yud, Kaf, Chaf, Lamed, Mem, Nun, Samech, Ayin, Pei, Fe, Tzadi, Kuf, Reish, Shin, Sin, Taf. Now I think I've said enough.